So I've been meaning to do a video on Sioux City, Iowa for some time now. When I was doing the research for Sioux Falls, naturally Sioux City kept coming up, and I found all sorts of interesting castle-style buildings there. So without further ado, let's take a look at the population demographics. And you can see we're not a very large city. At the turn of the century, 30,000 people. You've got so many buildings going up in that in this time period here. Again, you have to do the math on how many people were available, how many skilled hands were available to complete these constructions. So, Sioux City, Iowa. Oh, and I'd also like to mention that I'm using a new microphone for this video, so those of you that are familiar with my previous videos, let me know if you notice a difference, better, worse, the same, whatever you think. So we get the early settlement narrative in Sioux City coming through Lewis and Clark and their expedition. Apparently one of their party, a Charles Floyd, died in Sioux City, the only member of the expedition that died along the way. This is a monument nearby. Make of that what you will. And they say that the city was actually laid out in 1854 and 1855. Now remember, when you see the layout of these streets, how wide the streets are. It's like they're anticipating the railcar narrative and the massive amount of space between the buildings themselves. Also, to say that the building was laid out in the winter, that's not an ideal time to lay anything out, to do anything like that. And these are the types of images they want us to record in our minds of the history of these places. You see them quite often from that early time period. A narrative, I believe, has been overlaid for us, and a false history has been transplanted. Sioux City also bragging one of the first elevated railway systems. They say it was the third steam-powered elevated rapid transit system in the world. That happened in 1891, and then it was all transferred over in 1892 to electric. It's a very short-lived period of time on steam, as we're told. Very foggy early beginnings here in America in the 1800s. They called it Little Chicago for a time during the Prohibition era. But you're going to see so many of these castle-like structures. And what I like to focus on here in the channel is the difficulty that it would have taken to build these at that early time period before we had the resources we do in our modern day. And then of course you can throw in the population demographics. Modern day Sioux City 4 or 5 times what it was at the turn of the century, but at the time they're just throwing up these buildings like it was no problem at all. So my suggestion, as many of you know, but if you're new to this channel, is that the historical narrative, the timeline we've been given about history, is an intentional deception. And I think that the settled history in North America is much older than we are being told. And we have been given this the narrative that we're familiar with, that we grow up with, and that we are taught. We've been given that as a way to steer us away from the truth, and as a mechanism of control and division in our society. And pointing to architecture such as this church, the Cathedral of the Epiphany, as examples of magnificent architecture that would have been very, very difficult to accomplish in those early time periods. Using that as an indication that there's something wrong with the timeline. I find these very interesting as well. The Corn Palaces, this is supposedly 1891. Something very suspicious about this architecture, reminding me of the World's Fairs. I wonder if there was a demolition process going on. Possibly. You have even the rail car going through here. This is the old courthouse. You'll see this as we move forward. Yeah, I wonder if there's something not right about it, and I can't put my finger on it. These are magnificent structures. We'll see more of those as we move forward as well. We have an early fire in this suspicious-looking photo. You can see, looking like this smoke has been put into this photograph, so it's a bit suspicious, that's for sure. I thought I would include that. And so many of these brick structures, very ornately designed, as we're used to seeing here on this channel, as we explore the old world, particularly in North America, but really all over the place. The auditorium. There it is from the front. Impeccable brickwork, really. And often you'll get the case, people will say, well, they brought in, immigrants. I get that often from a specific location. Skilled hands were brought in from a particular European country to build these structures. Not realizing when people are saying that this is happening all over the United States. These buildings are going up everywhere, so are we to believe that there was just so many skilled stone and brick masons in the old world that were ready to immigrate and build these structures? The narrative falls flat on its face. It's easy to say that when you're just focusing on one location, but the narrative falls flat on its face when you realize how many towns were being constructed in such a manner. This is one of the early hotels. We have an Art Deco style building, the Badge Row building. Still stands, and it has a lot of that nice ornate Art Deco styling that you just don't see anymore, the stone heads. Apparently this was the original Badge Row building, going way back into the 1880s, 1870s, don't know exact date. But again, we would expect these type of buildings back here. Maybe the one next to it. Certainly not this type of architecture. Certainly no need to do any of this, according to the narrative we've been given. This is the Battery Building. I believe it has been renamed, but again, the vastness of the size for such a small city. And there it is. Still stands. Looking like it could be quite old. Quite a bit older than they'll tell us it is. You got a postcard from '09, and you can see again how well-built multi-storied structures, how many there are really in Sioux City. And if you're seeing the postcard, it is because I could not find a photograph of these structures, and they only really can be found readily available online in postcard form. Here we have the fine gentlemen of the brewery. Let me show you the brewery that they put together. There's their brewery. Let's look at the gentlemen again. They're obviously having a great time testing out their brew. A German brewery. Did they really have this built to brew beer? I have my doubts. And you get these early depictions, and looking like a lot more than what we see here as well. Much of it having been demolished at that point in time. Organized in 1899. Something wrong with the narrative here. Something really horribly wrong with the narrative here. This is a massive structure. Look at this. Like, you have to believe this existed, because this is still standing here. So this has all been taken out. Are they actually doing that much demolition at that early time period? And why? Why are they destroying so much at such an early time? Do they just have so many resources at their disposal that they can afford to demolish these multi-storied structures? It's quite a massive undertaking to destroy something like that. And there's a good look at the wide streets that were laid out apparently in the 1850s, at a time before any of this was going on, we are told. And there's that cathedral we saw earlier. Quite a few churches in Sioux City, and these are again magnificent structures. Very, very difficult to accomplish this type of construction, and as we see in a modern day photograph, how perfect and detailed these really are. And a lot of these are going up. A good handful really at the same time are being built. So you can't say that they pulled the resources and focused on one structure at a time, because the narrative has many of these structures going up during the same time period. I found the first congregational church only in this form. Almost gone. Almost unable to find it, but I did find this, quite a structure. And you can see the type of architecture. And this, we don't build anything close to this in the modern day. We wouldn't undertake it. And people will say, well, it has to do with money and it has to do with safety and resources. No, I think it has to do with our inability to accomplish such a thing. And if you were to undertake the building of a church like this in the modern day, it would be a national news story. It would really be, and it would take a very long time. And it would take the resources of all sorts of planners and master craftspeople. So, all these things need to be considered. Yet, we're looking at a city of 30,000 people in the late 1800s, early 1900s, throwing up half a dozen to a dozen of these types of churches. And you can really see that this is a pretty serious structure. So question the narrative, folks. I encourage you to question the narrative. I know it sounds unbelievable, but I think we're at a period of time where it's not such a stretch to question the narrative, question the powers that be, and what we have been told and what we've been taught. So much has relied on trust throughout the years. We have been asked to trust what we've been told about the past. So I am no longer trusting anything I have been told, and I encourage you, the viewer, to do the same. Okay, we have the City Hall, originally built as a federal building and post office. This was from 1897, this photograph. This photograph really giving you a sense of the the permanence, the castle-like structures here in Sioux City, Iowa. Something you would expect in Bavarian Germany to have been standing for 200-300 years, according to the narrative, but no, this is all fresh construction, supposedly at the time this photo was taken. And it still stands, so we have a look at, again, how perfect. Now, it's funny too, because you look at a photograph like this and it looks rough, and it looks you don't really get a sense of the detail, but this one that's still standing, you can tell how perfect the construction really is on this building. And it's absolutely gorgeous, and it really doesn't make sense to think that, what's this? That this was all done according to the narrative we are told. I'm going to zoom in on these. What do you think these are? Let me know in the comment section. Oh, we have a Morningside College. I think we'll get to that a little bit later in the video as well. It's just a taste. We'll move back to the Corn Palaces for a second. I have a couple more. I did show this one earlier. Now this is what I expect. See this? You know, single slope roof, false front to either side, false front here. That makes sense for the time period. This stuff does not make sense. Even as temporary, it doesn't make sense. Here's another one. All temporary. A lot of it is like corn husks and leaves and things like that, apparently. Here, I have more as well. You have this one, Corn Palace. Let's read this. Population in 1880 was only 7,366, and then it jumped to 37. So you have 30,000 people flocking to Sioux City. Remember, it's laid out in the 1850s, so like there's what, an anticipation of this massive growth. Light wooden frame, ingeniously covered with ears of corn, the whole presenting a fine architectural design and attractive appearance, looking almost identical to other structures we've seen, like city halls, courthouses, and things like that, but covered. So is this a cover-up? Is there, I have to ask the question. Something doesn't sit right. And we have also the horse-drawn streetcars here still, part of the narrative that says that these rail lines were originally designed to be pulled by horses before electricity became a thing. Very strange. Something very strange about all of this. And this is an interior shot too. This is a corn palace. I don't have the date on it, but if we look closely, it's very ornately decorated even on the inside. And on the inside interior ceiling and on the beams. This is all structure, right? Usually you don't decorate that kind of stuff, especially if it's temporary. And you can see how large this is, and how many people could gather in this temporary structure. So aligning with that World's Fair narrative are these corn palaces. And you have also, in places like Montreal, you have the ice palaces as well, which is also a very strange part of the narrative. Here again you have a massive castle, but temporary, we'll be told. This one looking not so spectacular. Not as vast and immense as the previous ones. So let me know what you think of the corn palaces, if you know anything more about it. Now here's that wonderful looking courthouse. You can see the time period on this one. This thing does not stand for more than, what is that? Not even 40 years? Not even 40 years. They tore this thing down. And it was, I did find a photo here actually. I did find a photograph, but it wasn't easy to find, and it took me a while to find this one. And you have to wonder why in such a small city this would be torn down, other than you're trying to erase evidence of the past. It's such a magnificent looking structure, it would be so very, very wasteful to destroy a structure like this. I can't really think of any other reason. Makes very little sense to destroy that. You can see, even built in 1875, and you have all these lower entrances. 1875, the population of Sioux City is about 5,000 people, and they're digging basements. Come on. Come on. We have to question the narrative here, folks. We have also a fire. Sioux City having a fire. Let me get to some more of the narrative here. Fire sweeps Sioux City in... Oh man, I wish I had the year. Apologies. So the year is 1904. The Pelletier fire. And I'm going to show you some of the aftermath here of the destruction. Let's show you a couple firehouses first from that time period. And these guys are just hanging around, I guess, when the fire breaks out. And here's another fire station. Everyone's looking very dapper, I must say. Very dapper indeed. Here's the aftermath of the Pelletier fire, 1904. Looking very familiar for those of us that question the narrative. Does this look like the remains of a fire? This looks like it's been bombed into oblivion. So even in Sioux City we get this fire narrative popping up, explaining that destruction. We talked about the demolition of the courthouse. What else was destroyed in these supposed fires? Fires and floods and hurricanes and tornadoes. So much of this stuff gets erased into the past. Wonderful looking stone structures, residences here in Sioux City as well. And very nice looking antiquitech on the peak of the roof here. There's the grain exchange next to the old courthouse. Nice looking building as well. A lot of cattle processing. and then grain. So you have industry, agriculture and industry, a large part of the Sioux City area. Excuse me. The Sioux City Central High School, castle, operated from 1892 to 1972. Apparently now run by non-profit organizations. Apparently, looking like it could be 500, 600 years old. If this were somewhere in Europe, like Poland or something like that, you wouldn't question that whatsoever. Really not making any sense why they would build a high school to look like a castle. Reminding me a lot of the Duluth Central High School as well. And certainly not something you would expect to see in Sioux City, Iowa. And it's on the National Register for Historic Buildings. So definitely one to check out if you're in the area. They're saying that these buildings were constructed at a later date to match the building, but you really have to question these things. You know for a fact it was built in 1892 because they plastered the date right on the front to cement the narrative. They put the narrative in stone. And you even get a wonderful surrounding stone wall. And it's elevated on the property, so you have to wonder, how deep does this go? The dungeon gymnasium, apparently, is a part of the school as well. And I think this one counts as a narrative buster. We'll move on to the St. Joseph's Hospital. And St. John also had a hospital. All the saintly endeavors of that early time period. Remember too, you see all these early schools and hospitals and healthcare and education not really coming into its own until the 1900s, and that as a result of funding from many of the robber baron type fellows, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, these types of names. So all of these predating a lot of that funding that gets poured into these systems, and you have to wonder, with that funding comes a narrative that those individuals are making sure is being pushed on the public. The Martin Hotel, here's a little shot of some of the exterior of that. Again, you can't really see it very well here, although you can see how ornate the top here is. And that's just a quick look at how amazing these are, really. How detailed. We saw this one earlier, the West Hotel. You can see that that stone foundation again. Let's look at a few more of these castle homes, these brick castle homes. You can tell these are going to last a long time. You can see how pristine they are, how amazing shape. This is weird too. Structurally, you have these columns supporting the weight above it, but is this supposed to be a beam that's meant to look like stone? Because these are just stones unsupported, and it's not even an arch, so you have to wonder if this is all facade to look like that. If anyone knows anything, anyone work construction in the area, same thing here. It doesn't make sense to have stone unsupported along these lengths, unless we're relying on the angle that these are cut. So like a flat, not an arch, but a flat supported area based on the stones themselves. I don't know. That's very interesting, and I don't know if I've seen that before. Just like you would on an arch, where you would each stone would rely on the one next to it for support. Is that what's going on here too as well? Anybody know any more about that? Let me know. Those Victorian era style homes of Sioux City. We have a few more. It's actually a good size file for such a small city. A lot of wonderful visual evidence. And not making sense again for the narrative. And that's the biggest problem here. And we can speculate. We could say that the entire population was reseeded. We can say that these weren't even built by us. We can say all these things, but really it's the timeline we have a problem with. And it's quite apparent that there is some sort of takeover that went on by a nefarious nefarious force under the guise of, I say this in many of my videos, but through religious organizations and gentlemen's clubs, controlling the consciousness of the people. So it's a very deep rabbit hole, I suppose you could say, this old world research. Here we have the library. Apparently it was the original city hall for less than 10 years before the city hall I showed you earlier. This one stands for, what, 53 years? Get my math right there. Does it really look like this one stood for 53 years? Take a look at the precision going on here. You have the large stone and the thin stone, and the large stone and thin stone. You have perfect archways. No, there's no mistakes going on here. And of course they had to top it off with the dome. That's a stunner as well. A narrative buster. And then this is the later public library. Still nice. We saw this earlier as well. But certainly not like this. This one, there's no way this one could have stayed with the narrative that we're meant to believe. This is the Masonic Temple. I wonder if there was an earlier version that I couldn't find. And here's another shot of the aftermath of the 1904 fire and the buildings that did not make it. So again, we're seeing, 1904, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 stories, structures made of stone, brick in Sioux City, Iowa, that are just being obliterated by fire and then torn down. Something more to the story here, folks. And then a nice looking rail car with an upper seating area. This would be fun to sit in that upper bench area. Take a ride through the city. I believe we saw this one earlier as well, the Metropolitan Building, although I didn't have the name for it earlier. And then the Morningside College again. Let's take a closer look. This is the Conservatory of Music at that college. Easy to build this type of structure at the time, apparently. I don't know if this one should be in there. Apologies for that one. Another grainy looking structure, a part of the Morningside complex. The Lewis Hall, impeccable brickwork, stone base. We have the Northwestern Depot, part of the rail system with its bell tower. And I dug for this one too. I saw it on a postcard and I couldn't find it originally. Then I finally got the name of it, the Northwestern National Bank, with this wonderful mansard-style dome on top. Fantastic looking structure. I found a couple pictures of it. These are the types of buildings that you see in a lot of these downtowns where they've removed a lot of the upper flare, possibly the dome. Sometimes they've removed a lot of this as well, and then you just have what looks like a flat roof structure, and then they've gone in and tarred and graveled the flat roof. But I think there was a comprehensive effort to take a lot of this off of the buildings, and then what looks like a much plainer building was once much more ornate. And of course Sioux City had to have an opera house. And not just any old opera house, but 5-6 story opera house. Had to go. So many of these, right? You're seeing a lot of fantastic evidence here in Sioux City. I wish we had a look at the inside. You can see a little bit of detail going on here. It gets pretty grainy, but you can see the ornate level of detail that once existed on this building. We are approaching the end of the file, but there is more I'd like to show you. The Orpheum Theater. Okay, not to be outdone by the old Opera House. Oh, we're seeing this house again. The Plymouth Block. This is the early Plymouth Block. You can see the rail cars. You can see a structure down here too that I don't think I have. It has a couple peaks on it. It always seems to happen as well. There's magnificent buildings that I just can't find are in the background of some of these postcards and photos. Police station, they built it like a castle. Some heavy stone use going on here. And there's a look at that elevated trainway, their entrance to the trainway, it looks like here. Pretty amazing. And you can also see here in the road, we have brick paved roads as well. So there's a lot of infrastructure and architecture here going on for such a small city. The roundhouse location. Everywhere there seems to be a railroad hub of some sort. The railroad narrative, again, is a part, I think, of the old world. It's much older than we are being told it is. And then there was a repurposing of the technology. This is the Smith School, frivolously putting up onion domes and stone castles. It's pretty incredible when you think about it. Another school, I don't have the name for this one. Beautiful though, look at that, the three-tiered peak on that. It just seems to be there's so many of these school structures. Here's another one. You get a fantastic looking cupola. Yet another one, not looking amazing, but still, it's 3 stories with a basement. So, the Tribune building, the largest circulation, the Sioux City Tribune, than other newspapers in the U.S. For 50,000 people at the time, they say. That's pretty prominent looking structure for a newspaper. Could have easily been a bank, you'd think. The Union Depot. There it is, a photograph, and again you're seeing that cobbled street look. Interesting. And very, all part of old infrastructure, I think. And as you know, we're near the end of the file when we start to see the YMCA pop up. I wonder if there used to be something on the corner here, on the rounded corner. So this has been Sioux City, Iowa. Was it everything you expected it to be? If you want me to look at a specific location, let me know in the comments below. This has been an old world exploration. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, and comment. I believe we are in the process of remembering who we really are and casting off the shackles of illusion. Until next time.